platforms here. Woohoo! Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've been wondering about the planetary alignment and why 2025 is already so insane, then do we have the World Crisis Planetary Predictions show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Michael Lennox, my all-time favorite astrologer, author of a brilliant new book, Psychic Dreamer, and creator of the Daily Astro Alert about what's happening in the stars and what it means for you. So welcome back to the show, Michael. Are you ready to shine?
I am. I am.
All right. So I'm going to start with the gentler question, and then the second question is going to be the everybody put your neck brace on. Question number one is, in the stars, why are we in for such a wild ride in 2025?
Well, the biggest reason energetically, astrologically, is the outer planets changing signs. When Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto change signs, it's a big deal for us. And when they do, there tends to be a lot of activity on the planet in the direction of whatever archetype is shifting. What's happening in 2025 is that all three of the outer planets are changing signs at the same time. So not only is that interesting for three different sort of jam-packed ways that an ingress, a planetary ingress, that's the word for moving into a sign, will bring about big shifts and changes on the planet. They'll also relate to each other in perfect geometry because they're all hanging out at like 1-2 degrees of the signs that they move into. And so they create patterns together. So Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are all going to be engaged in something called a grand sextile this summer and then again all of next year. Sextiles means 60-degree angles.
Yeah.
60 degrees is the angle of potential. So what these 60-degree angles bring isn't a thing itself, it's the possibility of the thing itself. This is going to feature strongly in our conversation about solutions when we get there. But meanwhile, just back to this idea. You've got Pluto, the planet of deep and slow change, the kind of changes that rock our world and go all the way down to like the molecular structure and back up again. You want slow change and transformation, death, rebirth, you need Pluto. And because he's the lord of the underworld and he's all about power and gravitas, when things change because of Pluto's movement or in reflection of Pluto's movements, those changes can be hard to move through because the ground is changing below your feet.
Yeah.
There's only one other agent of change in the zodiac, and that's Uranus. Uranus is the planet of fast change, lightning flash, the sudden pivots that knock you on your ass, but you pick yourself up again and are more awake. You know more. We call Uranus the Great Awakener. So when you want to shift something very fast, you need Uranus in the room. Yeah. So when you have slow change and fast change trining each other, meaning in a harmonious geometry of 120 degrees, we used to think of trines as like good. Oh, something good's going to happen. It's like, but that's not the right way to interpret a trine. A trine is that each participant is in full flow. Yeah. They both get to have their full voice. And so it's like the angle of harmony. So slow change and fast change working well together, that's revolutionary change that comes very suddenly, but goes very, very deeply. So now the last piece of it is that in between Pluto and Uranus that are at 120 degrees from each other lies Neptune, the planet of spiritual connection, beliefs, ideologies. And we are living an ideological conflict in the United States right now. And Neptune has been in his ruling sign of Pisces for 11 years, not 11 years, I'm sorry, since 2011. So for the last bunch of years, we've been deepening our ideologies and our beliefs and our spiritual connection. No matter what side you're on, Neptune in Pisces has deepened your conviction. And this summer, he moves into Aries, the sign of war. Uranus and Pluto are in air signs, Gemini and Uranus. Neptune in Aries is a fire sign. When you put air and fire together, you get big combustion. And so now the story of the summer of 2025 and all of 2026 is slow change, fast change, led by ideologies that are now on fire. So there you have it.
Now that we've laid the ground, laid that peaceful ground beneath us, you have been on the show since 2023. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Predicting civil war in the US. And I am not a doomsdayer. I am not somebody who pimps fear. But I'm looking at this from an energetic point of view. You've been saying this, civil war in the US in 2025, probably early 2025, you've been saying since 2023. And then you mention revolutionary change. Do you think... I don't even know how to ask this question, so I'm going to leave it at that and hand it off to you.
You can leave it to me?
Well, the question is... with all this energy and all this ideology and all this, I'm calling 2025 the amplifier, what you bring to it. And the reason that I say I'm going to bring goodness is what we bring in our hearts at this time is what is going to be amplified and put out there. The junk that is out there right now that is being amplified is suggesting that if we don't go to our hearts even more, shit's going down.
Yeah, and that is certainly my thrust in all of my teaching is that, because I speak to individuals, I don't speak to governments, I don't speak to, countries. So the idea of resilience and how we get through the wild changes has to come from how you shore yourself up to meet it. And for me, that's a spiritual practice, because that's what works for me, is seeing the world through the eyes of this is bigger than me, that there's something exciting about watching the world change if I can stay out of my fear of what does this mean for me. Because I think that's how we get through the next 2 years. I thought you were going to ask me, do I still think we're headed for civil war?
Well, that is what I'm asking.
Okay. Let me say it this way. One of the beautiful things about astrology, and frustrating, is that astrology does not predict things. It cannot tell you what's going to happen. I was talking to somebody on one of my social media, one of my social media followers was like, is this a good day for an interview? And I was like, absolutely, because, Mercury and Saturn were conjuncting. Good day for a solid, slow, responsible conversation. Then her next question was, will I get the job? And it's like, sorry. You've gone just past astrology and into magic, and maybe call a psychic, because there are people who could know such things. But astrology only reflects what's happening, and so it reflected her job interview.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of people in the entertainment industry at high levels. And so I can be sitting with somebody who's got a bona fide project, they've got a showrunner attached, and I can say, oh my God, these 6 months are so rich for your creativity. And then what happens is those 6 months are filled with meetings and possibility, and then the project slows down and doesn't take. The astrology reflected what was happening with the interest in the project, but it couldn't tell either me or my client what the net result would be. So similarly here, I can tell a story that says we are in full-on civil war in 2027. So let's do that for a moment.
All right.
There are many things that set up this time astrologically to be challenging for the whole world, and that's the ingresses of the planets that I just described. And even this, I'll just throw this in there. January was insane. But at the end of January, there was this tiny little semi-square, mild conflict between Pluto and Saturn. So you would think, oh, that's going to make people cranky that they're not getting their stuff done fast enough. But then, as it turned out to be a wild ride in the United States as we just watched things start to get a little crazy. The other thing, or one of the other things that's happening with the chart of the United States is that we are getting ready to move into what's called the Uranus return.
Okay.
So Uranus is that planet of revolutionary fast change, things that happen very suddenly.
Yeah.
And when he comes back to where he was when he starts, that's called a return. So we all, if we live to 85, will have a Uranus return. So just like a solar return, your birthday, when the sun comes back to where it was when you were born, the idea of a return is that that planet that is returning is reactivating the consciousness of that planet, right? So at your birthday, it's the sun. The consciousness of your sun is like, I'm me, I was born, and you're going to celebrate me for a couple of days because we are returned to our sun consciousness.
Can I pause you for a brief second? Because this is, to me, everything. This is, I want you to lay this out even more clearly, what this return is, when it was last like this, what this means.
Yes. So, at the original creation of the United States, Uranus was in Gemini, in the sign of Gemini at 8 degrees. By the way, it's one of the reasons why our country is built on a conflict. From the very beginning, even just like where the capital would be, and were we going to be a country of yeoman farmers or manufacturing? And so Uranus at 8 degrees out of the Revolutionary War says that the consciousness in the United States of disruptive energy that's part of our birth,
Yep.
every 85 years, when Uranus comes back to 8 degrees of Gemini, the country has some kind of an event. The first one was the Revolutionary War in the birth of the nation. 85 years later was the Civil War. 85 years after that was World War II, that we tried to stay out of in like 42, 43, and by 44 we were like fully engrossed, and that was when the Uranus return is happening. So 2027 is the next one. So we are building towards that as well. And even though Uranus is in Taurus right now, there's a rumble that's about 2 years away for the United States, and people are getting woken up to awareness that is happening. People are seeing things that they did not and could not see before. Pluto returned to the United States helped that. We talked a lot about that. So yeah, the Uranus return is the one that would have signaled to me that could be real trouble in 2 years.
Okay, so now let's go from there. Thank you. Let's go to Pluto return and what that means right now, and what, if I'm understanding it right, a conjunction of the South Node. What's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So the Pluto return, like we're covering returns now, right? So countries can have Pluto returns and Uranus returns, is the 250 year circling back of Pluto to 27 degrees of Capricorn. That's where Pluto was when the country was formed. So Pluto is the planet of the shadow, of the hidden, of the underbelly, things that we don't want people to know about, and we hide and we disown. And the United States has a myth that it was built upon, that all men are created equal in a country that was founded in genocide and built by slaves, and all men are not created equal in the United States of America. And for my money, that is as true today as it was in 1776 when Pluto was at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So when Pluto came back to that at 20, golly, when was that? 2020. I had them in my notes. My notes are too long.
It's okay.
So yeah, our Pluto return was like 2022 and 3, where Pluto was hovering. That was the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, Me Too. There was all of this stuff rising up in the United States of here's what's below the surface, both in the challenge of racism in the United States and, the misogyny and the xenophobia, and all of the challenges got exposed. The idea that There is a president in the White House years ago and once again now that allows for garden variety, racist, awful white supremacists to be comfortable being full out. That was a Pluto return thing because that racism has always been here. And now it's just right there in front of us.
Is that,
So,
forgive me for connecting the dots. You said that we had, when we first founded this country, and then the Civil War was 85 years later, because it feels to me like not only is it a full return going back to when this country was founded on what it wasn't, founded on lies. Let's be honest about it. But it really feels like we're attempting, not we, not you, not me, not the listeners here tonight, but it feels like there is an attempt to relive the Civil War with a different outcome.
yes, yes, it's a return. It's like we didn't get it right the last time. So there is a sense of that. And I would also say this, the idea that we're at the right age of a country to have a Pluto return and a Uranus return just a few years apart. See, for Pluto and Uranus, 23 and 25, 6 or 7 is barely a breath. So we're having the Pluto return of here's what's the underbelly of the country. And then the Uranus return says, and I'm standing here with a match and a bunch of gasoline. And so the Civil War possibility in 2027, I think sort of comes from the Pluto return, 22 and 23, revealing everything. Now the ingresses of 25 and 26 light the fire, air and fire. We get lit up with change and movement and sudden and revolutionary energy. And then the Uranus return is in 2027. Now remember the sextiles, Michael?
Yes.
Sextiles, productive energy of potential if you pick them up. Now, here's where we got to talk about what's possible, because all of us can pick up the grand sextile of beliefs and ideologies leading us towards a willingness to allow deep, slow change and fast, disruptive change to happen, because we're creating something new that gets us past all this conflict and in the possibility of creating a new America that is worthy of the age of Aquarius. Because the America that is now, the America of the Pluto return and the America of the current administration is not that. It is not worthy of the age of Aquarius. It is, in fact, antithetical to the age of Aquarius, because the hallmark of the age is all human beings are cared for. And this is where I get enraged, because when Donald Trump walked into the White House this January, he systematically began to strip away the rights of people of color and trans people and marginalized people. And that is not the age of Aquarius. And so what can rise up out of this could be a stunning city on the hill. But we have to get through the war to get there. Like, there's no getting around that we're in a Gordian knot, and Gordian knots need to be cut by Alexander's sword. So whether we die in explosions while we're cutting the Gordian knot, or it's a little more organic, we have to move through revolutionary change to create what's coming. That's the new America.
So can this energy that's coming right now, and this energy of potentiality, can we actually see this as a seed? And then we'll get into Uranus and so much more. Can this be a seed, not one that we consciously asked for, but can this be the seed for some sort of powerful, positive shift for humanity?
Absolutely. In fact, when you ask me questions about the state of affairs right now, as an astrologer, I can talk enormously about what is possible in all of this as a kind of extraordinary moment in the unfolding. But as a pedestrian, I can't go there because now I'm going to talk about, well, how are we going to do that? And where's the rule of law? And what's Congress doing? And how are we going to, right? So the voter in me is going to get stuck in the story of how the government works. What's the rule of law? How is Congress functioning? But the astrologer in me is very excited about this time. Very.
This is what I was alluded to in a newsletter. I did my Daily Woohoo newsletter earlier today. I said a completely different definition of duality. That's what you're talking about right here. Yeah. Yep. Is we have the us that realizes we're fully energy. We are the creators. We are the divine. And you still have to see whatever is before you and look both ways before you cross the street.
Yes, exactly. Life is as it is.
Yeah.
And we can't unsee it now, and that puts us in a great creative position to create anything with those grand sextiles. So the people who are moved to get activated for change, it's like we can use these 2 years to find a deeper spiritual connection, a more of an active participation. I don't think that anybody gets to sit this out. It doesn't mean you have to do what everybody else is doing, but I don't think it's wise to not somehow participate in what's going on.
You used an interesting word, activated. And we discussed this briefly before the show, and you said, Michael, I must speak my truth. I am activated at this time. Are we all being activated?
Now, that's actually a really good question, because part of my job is to use the sensitivity that I am blessed with to make such assessments. But in this moment, I'm in the formation of like, I don't know how yet. It's bullshit because I'm doing it, but the feeling is like I don't know yet how to have an angry activated voice to incorporate it into the way I teach and feel like I know what I'm doing with that, right? So like you inviting me to this was sort of like an interesting opportunity I saw of like, what will it feel like to like talk about how I feel about what's going on through the lens of astrology without getting too like vulgar in my reactive language to, like voter Michael, not Dr. Michael Lennox.
Well, it's interesting. I have Hanaver who might be trying to crash the party here in a moment. What am I doing? Or where's Lumi? Where's Lumi? Yeah. I don't know where Lumi is. That's our kitty. It's interesting when I have talks with Jessica sometimes and I have all this energy inside of me. I might go, I'm angry. And then I go, actually, it's not anger. I don't have a word in the English language for it that says I have an energy that wants to step forward and I don't know how or where to go with that energy yet.
Michael, you just gave me a gift because, and this may be too personal in my process, but like I have anger. Like anger is not something that's foreign to me. I live out loud. I have the most joy and laughter and full expression because I live out loud in all directions. Then that includes when I get angry. And there are times where, I grew up in an angry family. My anger is at the ready, and my anger has cost me in my life. Mm-hmm. So I have a kind of youngish feeling of like, oh, I'm get angry when I get angry. And if I am angry and activated, like, am I going to blow out my teaching because I'm going to just bring my anger? That never happens. But you just gave me a kind of way to reframe it, because this anger, it's not that anger. It is a different thing. And I like your language. Like there's something in me that feels compelled. And
that's what, thank you. And that's what I'm, careful, liking not, but liking about this time is that 2025, I've said it since, I think I started saying it last year. I said at the end of 2024, I said, rest, get your energy, breathe deep. You're going to get to take action in 2025. Nobody gets to stay on the sidelines. Right. This is not the year of being on the couch.
And let's add to this for just a second, Michael, that the year doesn't have to be only about what's happening in the world. These grand sextiles are gorgeous, creative energies to build anything that comes from your ideals and your beliefs, and also just inspiration. Neptune is also creative inspiration, and he's been marinating in a place where the inspiration lives. Pisces is where inspiration dwells, and then if we're lucky, it sort of pushes into our consciousness and we get to benefit from it. That's rich for all of us. That has nothing to do with the United States or politics or anything, but your creative pursuits and desires. There's beautiful energy to build nice stuff with.
Well, it's what I've been teaching in the School of Mystics is there's so much more energy, but it's actually easier to merge with source or creator or whatever we want to call it with this energy at this time and find yourself as the creator of a new greater reality.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I have experienced that in the last 6 months like never before. That I feel squeezed in my physical body. I have some challenges. The retrograding Mars squared my Mars for 4 weeks. It still is. Yeah. I passed out working, doing a deep meditation. I've been dropping things, and it's just been a mess. But my inner explorations have never been richer. They're so solid and so workable because something's happening. And if you are at the passive affect of the energy that's happening, that sucks. But if you can marshal a kind of way that you, as an individual in your body, know how to move energy through you, it's bigger and greater than it's been. Dive in, kids, because that's what's going to save us too.
Thank you. I want to go to the next piece of this puzzle, but we share, I don't share the same physical challenges that you have, but because I had a traumatic brain injury a few years ago, and I have both parents now with Alzheimer's and start of dementia, I said, I better get on top of my brain stuff and my mind gut stuff. And part of it was, I got on this protocol that helped. I was living in Quebec and practicing French last summer. That tremendously helped. And so I started a new diet about a month or so ago that was prescribed for brain challenges like mine. And it was a keto-based diet. And over a period of a couple weeks, because of the complexity of my case, my brain went stupid. I'm talking radically stupid. I'm a week and a half out. I still have I don't know if short-term memory is the thing. I cannot hold, in this, I'm channeling right now. We're good. We're great. But if I was to walk out of this room right now, or the interview's over, I walk out of the room, what was I doing? And I come back and I'm forgetting everything. And I'm going into a store. Where'd I put the shopping cart? Forget about where the car is. and my energy for teaching, though, as my students will say, is through the roof. Right? Yeah,
no, it's on fire.
You get this.
Happening. No, listen, the other day I was making a ribeye steak and I brined it salt. I salted it an hour before, which it exudes liquid and then pulls it back in. Nice way. But I didn't pepper it. So I'm searing it. 2 minutes sear, 6 minutes in the oven, 2 minutes basting on the stove. That's how you cook a 2-inch ribeye. And so I'm like, I want to pepper it before I put it in the oven. So I'm searing it. While I'm searing it, I turn around to do what? What am I doing? My steak's going to burn. What am I doing? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. It just left my mind. This happens every day. But the inner movement through and out as channel has never been richer. And if that's true for people like you and I who have cultivated, and many of the people who are listening who have cultivated your capacity to do that, channel and steward energy, that's going to get richer and richer and richer as Neptune moves into Aries and starts interacting with Pluto and Uranus.
Thank you. Let's dive into this next piece, but it's funny. So, like yesterday or this morning, I'm filling the water filter, filling the water jug that filters the water for, so you have pure water. And I go to take the nozzle to put in the water or something, and I get things out of order, and I start burning the water before it even gets to it. You get it.
Yeah, the rational mind is shutting off, but the divine mind is on fire.
Yeah. So
and
do
will
we
be more so as we go?
See, that's what I'm loving about this time period. If there's not just a saving grace, but I see a shift and a potential and an opening for this. So do we go from Pluto to Uranus, or where's the next step in understanding this puzzle?
Well, let's talk about the progressed cycle, the progressed lunar cycle.
Perfect.
All right. So progressions in astrology are actually a really juicy technique. They're not organic. They don't follow the solar system in any kind of a way. It's an algorithm that we apply to the natal chart, or in this case, the chart of the United States. Just like the 4 pillars of the cosmic lunar cycle, there's a new moon that starts up in Alpha Omega. At the first quarter, we're in a crisis. Some of the seeds we plant will thrive and some will fail, and we need to turn towards that which is thriving and let go of what's failing. At the full moon, we have harvested something. We've built something that we can consume, and we release the scaffolding that got us there. And then in the third quarter moon, it's called the disseminating moon. We're like tested to bring our A game out into the world, and then we start again at the Alpha Omega. So the progressed lunar cycle, this algorithmic slow movement of placements in a chart, the lunar cycle plays out over 28 years. And interestingly enough, we are sort of smack dab in the beginning of a progressed lunar cycle. That was 2024.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, that at a moment that you can look out at the United States and really clearly see that it's at the beginning of a new consciousness, that's a progressed new moon. So what will then happen is 2031 or so, there'll be a kind of turning point from things that got created now. Some ideas will fail, some will thrive, and we turn the corner. Full moon, 2038. Not only will 2038 be kind of like a culmination of look what we built and look what we don't need anymore, starting from now, there will be a change in the sun sign and the moon sign in the progressed chart at that time. So the 2038 moment is kind of like the shiny beacon on the hill of the new America that got the seed planted for. That is now, last year.
Yeah.
It's terrifying germination.
Oh boy.
But it was fascinating to me when I started looking at the chart to just, for shits and giggles, I went and said, let's look at the progressed chart. And I was just gobsmacked that we were in a progressed new moon. Because they really are very significant, and it gives us a very clear 28-year pattern of a kind of movement of what gets built or created or started in the new moon energy. So I think, speaking to the idea that in the short term, we're in an incredible bump, but in the long term, it's just life moving, that when we get out of this sort of reckoning and ending and extinction grab of the old ways, I really think we have the potential of something spectacular.
Thank you. Can we use the term for this time period? It's not an astrological term, but can we use the term karma?
Karma?
Yes.
Oh, God, yeah. Certainly, especially in the westernized American sort of way, we throw around karma, which is not quite what karma is when you're living karma in a lifestyle of Buddhist orientation. But yes, I think it's you set something up out of balance and it will come to roost at some point. And so we have to fix this divide and either disappear as a country or get reborn as a stronger version of us. But we don't get to sit it out. We you know, sorry, kids.
All right, so let's go from there. I'm looking at the notes here, and there's so much here. You have, I think we're talking about what's coming in the future. North node of, so we're looking at the U.S. chart here, and I've got North node of U.S. at 6 degrees, and that's about benevolent leadership. But we have Leo, which is, well, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So this was actually something that I had never thought of before. I've looked at the chart of the USA a lot. I've never talked about what I've seen because that's, private, because I've never wanted to be politically connected as an astrologer. And I don't think I have a choice to not have that be. So it's delicious to actually be talking about, I'm probably not going to look at Blake Lively's chart and do a thing to see why she's like having a bad year. Although that would be a fun chart to look at. So the nodes of the moon in any chart are really significant to reflect the beings, whether, the country or the person, their journey. The south node is the start of it. In kind of woo-woo astrology, we would say the south node in your natal chart is your entrance into this world from past lives. So if we're not going to apply that sort of mystical perspective to a country, we can certainly look at the south node of the USA and say it's the fact that it's in Aquarius is fascinating to me. It means that we come with an understanding of caring for the whole, because that's the nature of the Aquarius archetype. So anybody, like if I'm sitting with any chart and we look at the sign of the south node, we would describe that sign and its house placement as being energy that you were familiar with, that you're good at. Like I'm a singer, and every time the moon's in a different sign, I sing a little differently. But when the moon is in Capricorn, my south node, I sing the best. So it's interesting to me that in our karmic creation, we understand the age of Aquarius. It's in our entrance. But the north node, the opposite, is where we go to, what we move toward. Yeah. And so we've been out of balance because we were created on a lie. So our north node in Leo is being expressed as narcissism. Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist. He has a mental illness and he's a sociopath. He is the perfect president for the United States, which is sad to say, but it is this idea of the Leo energy on fire and out of balance is grandiose, it's narcissistic, and it is nasty leadership. And so the transcendent third that the United States has to create, any opposition will create a transcendent third. So the opposition of, I know, care for all, I get sidetracked with leadership, so I go through a crisis and we create a new form of leadership that enjoys the benevolence of Leo and the karmic understanding of Aquarius that says we care for all with our warm, benevolent leadership.
Which means even more so to me, we have to ground and anchor, connect with source, merge with source energy, dive down deep and anchor our roots so that we are not either pulled asunder or go to the anger without kind, compassionate action, whatever that means for us.
You know, the nodes of the moon cosmically change signs in January. So just as we enter this 2-year challenge, we got a new directive. And the North Node, which is the future, is in Pisces. That's the sign of spiritual connection. So in fact, Michael, the solar system right now is saying, move towards your spiritual practice. And I've said since the beginning of my teaching, and I'm sure you say some version of this, if you must put your spiritual fitness first, because everything else comes from that.
Even beyond that, I say that we are creators, we are projectors, we are a fractal holographic representation of everything, and we are, despite everything that we're hearing at this time, are told to believe, we are all powerful.
Yes.
And we are.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the big challenge today, is this push-pull of energy, this dynamic, that either we can kind of Tai Chi this energy and bring it in and figure out what to do with it,
Yeah.
or it rips us apart.
I feel pulled in two directions. One is to say that in the structure of the chart of the United States, this nodal opposition, all oppositions are tense. They have a tension. And you can divide an opposition into something called an easy opposition when you divide it into a sextile and a trine. In the chart of the United States, that nodal path is divided by Uranus. So that means when the Uranus return occurs, Uranus is also activating the nodal path of the United States. There's a distinction between, well, which direction is the trine and which direction is the sextile. Yeah. So the fact that Uranus trines the south node in the United States chart means that when we're looking to let go of our past, we let go of it easily. The sextile is the work, the potential, I got to pick up behaviors, right? So the fact that Uranus sextiles the north node of the moon makes that Uranus return also an easy push forward to our natural next iteration of our destiny, though in unstable ways, right? So that's just another way to put a little astrology in the mix that I think carries some hope, even though there's so much instability. And the other thing that I was moved to say when you, my brain fog has just sort of come, and I'm not even sure what it was. So sorry.
We went to, no. I have been there more than you realize. We're talking about being the creator.
Yeah, I've lost it.
It's quite all right. So what else do we need to know? So right now we're going through an eclipse season, I believe, again.
Yes, we are the new moon in Pisces.
Yeah,
was 15 minutes ago.
Wow. Oh, that 444 on the West Coast.
444.
Tell me more.
So truly, this is the new moon to set the intention to put spiritual connection first. And so, the next lunation in 2 weeks is our first eclipse. So we are in a month that begins some of the harder energies of the year because of eclipse season and all of the retrogrades that are passing. Talk about preparation, though. Personal planet retrogrades rewire all of us as individuals at the individual level all of us. So if Mars goes retrograde, all of us are rewiring how we are embodied, how we choose and how we go. Mars just finished his backward motion, just as Venus has stopped moving at 10 degrees of Aries, and she will turn around in a minute. And then Mercury will turn around, and Venus and Mercury will line up in Aries and then backtrack together back into Pisces. So why this is juicy, mind and heart are often challenged by not being in alignment, and these retrogrades are what help us as humans get more into alignment with right thinking, right feeling, and then in a place where you're feeling the things you're talking about and talking about things that you feel deeply about in alignment. So the fact that we're getting an alignment of mind and heart that is the difference between being in Pisces or Aries, connection and protection, or war and fire. The back and forth thing is getting us more in touch with our spiritual water, so that when we step into the fire, we're bolstered with the feminine principle of mother guiding us.
Yeah.
And then Mars, similarly, his retrograde was back and forth between Cancer and Leo. So when Mars went into Leo earlier last year, it was like, let's get on fire with our leadership and our projects and our creativity. And Mars says, oh, no, you don't. None of y'all know enough about self-care and protection. So we're going to go back to where I hate being, Cancer, because we all have to learn how to put our needs first so that we can serve more powerfully. So the personal planet retrograde shit show is preparing us all, mind, body, and heart, to move into what's coming with greater courage, resilience, and creative excitement.
Thank you. Is there such a thing as, and particularly for this year, as a sine curve of energy, where there's moments that spike and it's a duck and cover, and a moments that ease up, and we can we can breathe easier, because this year feels like it just keeps getting stronger. The energy gets stronger and stronger and stronger until we go hunkle.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can be surprised by what happens, right? That I knew that January was going to be difficult because we were building towards this Saturn-Pluto dust up, but I was shocked at how difficult it was. I knew that January 2020 was going to be wild, but I was shocked at all of the things that January after the other. So similarly, I don't think I expected things in the outer landscape to be as hot as they are, because the astrological hotness is still like 5 months away, summer. So that leads me to have to say, yes, that disruptive energy, when we have 3 months of a grand sextile being held with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, that's going to be energy that, I don't know if you'll remember this, but like, I remember the quote. We were talking 2019, you said, well, what do you mean change and transformation? I said, like we've never seen before. What?
I remember you saying like we've never seen before.
Now, and do you get it? That how could I possibly? I'd have to be some magic clairvoyant to have been able to predict all of that. So similarly, I'm now in a position that if January and February, and now eclipse season, is at like a 6 or 7 on the scale, summer's going to be wackadoodle. But don't forget that astrology describes everything, including fun and joy and yummy and right. So it's we're talking about all the difficulty, but there is also dynamism in that energy. And life goes on. Governments do all kinds of shit and people's lives change and life still goes on. And so we have to remember that as well. And that what's going on in life is energy that we can make good things with as well. So but yeah, I would just say the summer is going to be unstable. in a way that I have to say I don't quite know yet what that's going to feel like because
Well, and it's interesting to me because I always look at energy pumped into the system. Solar flares pumped into a system. Heat pumped into a system. When energy is put in the system, full moons put into the system. Things happen with that amount of energy. So I'm wondering if we're looking at 5 months from now, we'll call it potentiality going down. There's a good way to put it. Potentiality going down. Can we internally anchor into a vision right now and make that a more likely outcome for the summer when things go berserkoid?
So now I remember the story.
Yes.
Because it's about this. I was, called or texted or whatever. This is about, I guess it had to be around 2005 or so. I don't remember when the tsunami was. Yes, 2005, 20 years ago, because we just had the 20th anniversary of the tsunami, right? Wow. So I get this text. It's from the mother of a colleague of mine from grad school. She's a woo-woo kind of lady, and she invited me to like a big spiritual gathering, and I called, her daughter is like, should I be going to this? And she's like, well, I'll be there. I was like, all right, I'll go. So we get there, and there's, 20, 30 people, and it's lovely, lovely human beings. And she gathers us in a circle, and she says, okay, I've been given some information. There's going to be a tsunami. It's going to be very big. It's going to be out in the Pacific, sort of by Asia. It's going to kill a lot of people. And I was told that I needed to gather people in a circle to help dispel and discharge energy from the mother so that we can mitigate the power of the earthquake. And she said there are, I don't remember what she said, but she was indicating that she also knew that what she was being downloaded with this idea, she was not alone, that there were many people around the planet that were getting this message. My eyes almost fell out of my head from rolling them so much. This was too much woo-woo for me.
Yeah.
And, but I participated fully in the evening, but I remember feeling a little contempt.
Yeah.
Arrogance. Just, I was younger and stupider, and lo and behold, the tsunami came, and I don't know if we helped. But I believe in the power of the collective. I do believe that Lori was given a message from the collective organism of the human species.
Yeah.
And that one person living in their little garden yard praying for the salvation of the earth and the movement of the United States and the righting of, crooked ways makes a difference. So doing that on your own, gathering with others to do the same, I suspect that in my monthly gatherings on Zoom that I do, that there's a likelihood that my final meditation, where we're sending light around the world, and we'll be talking about that a lot, where then people are gathering, sending those intentions into the collective. I think that's real, and it makes a difference. And so we can, I don't know any other way outside of activism to change things on the planet. You either have to be in the room where things are happening. I don't mean literally in the room, I mean you have to be out activating where people are making a difference. And or doing it with your energy and prayers on a regular basis, because it counts.
Thank you. And as I keep coming back to, I feel it counts now more. Again, this amplification, I feel it counts more. You could, so doubling back on well, I was stupid that you said. I used to think I knew more than I do now. That's the best way to put it, Michael. And I used to say that, and I do believe we get to step forward now. Whatever calls on our heart. I'm not going to say do this, do that, go against, go for, go anything. Although I highly recommend go for rather than against anything. But I used to say the days of being in the cave as a monk are gone. And while I truly believe we get the step forward, I also believe the days of the cave and the monk are actually more powerful now. You can actually do even more good.
More in the cave. I agree 100%. 100%. The cave is amplified, and yeah, we need to leave the cave.
Yeah. So
keep going back. Keep going back, right? But
yeah. Touch base with the cave. So I'm going to take some listeners' questions now, and if some listeners want to throw out your questions, please do so. Got a document going with Aya Bear, super moderator extraordinaire. Give me the questions. First one is from Ria, and she asks, since the entire premise of astrology is based on the significance of positioning of celestial objects, perhaps broader and particularly timely inquiry might be asking Dr. Lennox to address stelliums and specifically super stelliums. I don't know what a stellium is, Michael.
Well, a stellium is a gathering of planets, and while I'm not sure I vibe exactly fully with what the questioner is trying to get at, it is accurate that when planets are gathering together, that they vibe each other up. That's the theory in astrology. So that when you take your first breath and we look at the map of where things were and we see a gathering of planets, that counts. Like the United States chart has a Cancer stellium, Venus in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, Sun in Cancer. And while Mercury is in Cancer and retrograde, do you believe that? Mercury's retrograde in the chart of the United States. I think that's hysterical.
You want to tell us what you think that means, Michael?
I think that our messaging isn't always direct, honest, clear. I think that placement has allowed the voice of the United States to be out of balance in the world. But there's power in the stellium of Sun, Jupiter, and Venus that happened to be in a little meeting in July 1776. So that the essence of our country in the sign of Cancer means there's a demand to nurture and care for people. So the minute we shut our door, I mean, I'm not saying we should overrun the country, but if we're not caring for those who come our way, then we're not honoring the Cancer archetype. And the fact that Jupiter's right there means there's an expansiveness to the United States and a heartfelt love for people through Venus in Cancer, not without our problems and our duplicities, but that stellium is what makes America truly a great country. And that's the power of a stellium.
So, and I'm going to dovetail on that, coming dangerously close perhaps to politics, but I would say that if we take to love and we come from a place of love and we say that we want and will have and demand from everybody, and we demand leadership that comes from a place of love, that shifts. And the original title of this was US in Crisis, and I switched it to World in Crisis, although we're talking about the US chart. But really what happens here, if we come and switch and radiate out of love, will have that ripple effect across the entire planet.
Yes, love is the healer.
So let's go from there.
Time heals all wounds, but it's really love. It just takes time for love to show up fully.
Thank you. Let's go from Pam, and we are not fear mongering here. I will say that first. So it is an important question, but I want to caveat that. Pam asks, what if humanity refuses to fix the divide and embrace the new? What could happen?
War. Right. I believe in the arc towards goodness. I believe in love as an unfolding, and I believe in the age of Aquarius. And so I think it's a great question. It's a really very simple thing. The more we resist the love that we will ultimately get to, the harder it will be. So if it does happen in that way, that means that there's war like we've not seen before in the United States as how the change occurs. And we've been putting a lot of money in the bank, you and I, of we don't have to have it go that way, even though we can see that as a possibility. And I think we accomplish that with love and prayer and hope. And I'll say one further thing.
Sure.
If it gets to that, we have the resilience to get through that. And it's not a forever thing. We are in a breakdown, but that breakdown will lead to a breakthrough, and then there will be a transformation. It's just not this year, next year, or probably the year after that.
And there are a lot of spiritual teachers, which I cringe every time I hear it. But there are a lot of spiritual teachers. I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just cringeworthy who say, guys, we ain't just human. And evolutionary, we will come through this as a species on the other side.
Yeah.
Let's go to Michelle from here. She asks, I'd be very curious about people born during eclipses and the significance of it.
You know, it's not as outrageous as one might think, but it is significant. One is there might be a more intense emotional expression.
Yeah.
The sun and the moon in the chart relate in such a way that describes how that person's conscious awareness processes unconscious impulses, right? So depending on that geometry, that can either be an easy thing for someone or a hard thing for someone. I have a sextile between my moon and my sun. I process very, very fast, which is actually a problem because I process faster than anybody's. And I'm anxiously attached. So I'm like, I'm done. Can we talk now? So, excuse me.
Well, thank you for being patient with me. I'll speak faster, Michael.
Repeat the question real quick.
People are very curious about people born during eclipses and the significance of it.
Oh, yes, comes in. So, the most important thing to note with people born under eclipses is that they will naturally and organically move through large, important life events, likely in an eclipse, right? It becomes part of the sort of imprinting of you at your first breath. And so then the person born under an eclipse might graduate from college in an eclipse, or get married, or have a child, or start a big job. Like, eclipses should be looked forward to by someone who has one in their chart as a good time to do things or plan things of importance, whereas the person not born under an eclipse is more likely to get a little shaken up energetically at eclipses. But if you have that in your sort of embodiment from your first breath, it's more natural for eclipses to be significant.
Thank you. So this next question is interesting, and if you need, I'll give a little more backstory information. There's a lot of channelers lately who've been talking about 3 days of darkness and a flash of light. And I don't know if you've heard of that or not, meaning this pulsing of the sun where it's kind of an inhalation of energy, and then it exudes this tremendous flash of energy over the planet that one would think would kill everybody, but instead helps us awaken or ascend to a higher level. And Nancy asks, does astrology show a time where this, or does astrology support a time when this could take place?
God, that's such a great question. Where astrology can't is that astrology describes the unfolding of the three-dimensional experience of time, of us as time. We are time. Time and the body are synonymous. We don't move through time. Time moves through us. And astrology is a perfect description of the divine unfolding plan consciousness that can
Yeah.
be known and understood in advance. What's challenging for me, as a half scientist, half mystic, is that this idea of downloads and five-dimensional experiences, I know to be true because I've had them. I live them. Every time I meditate, I'm riding the groove of my five-dimensional body with the somatic way that I can feel things that are just weird that way, right? So it's not like I don't believe in downloads and uploads and 3 days of black and flashes of light that upgrade us. But astrology, for me, can't describe that because it's really stuck here in 3D. Plus, there's randomness and chaos. This has got nothing to do with the question, but like when I'm talking to people about their lives unfolding, I sometimes have to remind them that astrology only describes the unfolding plan and not the fact that 50% of the equation is randomness and chaos. Nobody wants to talk about that in manifestation circles, right? They say, you can have anything you want. It's like, no, you can't. So I would say that in my scientific use of astrology, I would say I don't believe that astrology will describe that, but there are plenty of astrologers who will talk about astrological moments as portals of possibility
Yeah.
for that, but I'm not that astrologer.
Thank you. And that's okay. We had a question. Somebody was saying, can I move back from the mic a bit? And so I'm like looking at my sound levels while I'm speaking to you here. They're saying that,
Is that
we're off
me or
balance.
you?
No,
They think
me,
Michael
me.
should move back from his
No,
mic.
nope,
It could
nope,
be
nope. This is the two Michaels. There was something else before I jump into that next question here. Oh yes, to me, there's always a preponderance of the evidence. So today we can, as a humanity, be heading toward one path, but an event can happen or a thought pattern can happen across the planet that shifts us to a new preponderance of the evidence. And so what was predicted may have been absolutely coming true with that set of information, but now we've jumped to a new set of information.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're almost talking about what so many people are using the term timelines and switching
Yes.
timeline to talk about. Um, Listen, I think all of these things like switching timelines and the possibility of downloads that happen, uh, uh, um, I'm in this chair. I
I
have a
know.
challenge with it, partly because what I observe sometimes is a lot of magical thinking that keeps people out of the sort of crucible of the shadow and a spiritual connection that comes from the inside out, where you've gone to the depths of your psyche to find a deeper connection. I get a lot of magical thinking vibes when I see some people talking about the downloads and the uploads and the
To me, it can be, and it's the danger. The audience loves, and the spiritual community loves predictions. But there is a danger in that of either a spiritual bypass or sitting on the couch and not doing the work.
yeah. There's no such thing as a prediction. You work with information that's knowable and feelable, some of which is intuitive and some of which is downloaded. I'm not going to decry someone's description. If someone comes to me and says, I got a download and I had this experience, I'm going to lift that up as completely chef's kiss, and I can hold it individually.
Yeah.
And again, I have all my own experiences of five-dimensional multidimensionality. It's the collective piece where you might have a million people who are really doing the work and are talking about downloads and uploads because they're in it. And then there's the 3 million who are just, astrologers wearing little clothing so that they get more clicks and talk about, how everyone's going to meet their soulmate this month. And it's like, that's not happening. Astrology shouldn't be used to predict. It should be used to provide context. It should be used to reflect things that you can't know without some kind of a objective structure to look and examine things, and to sort of have a recognition of an energy I can read that I'm feeling in my body, and then astrology matches what I'm feeling, and then there's like an ease with whatever I'm going through, because astrology tells me it's natural, it's organic, it will pass, and we will move through it. I think that using astrology to predict is dangerous, because anything you think of that might come to be, your fantasy alone will eradicate that possibility. So I don't use astrology in that way, and I know that it's very attractive for a lot of people to do so.
So the next question is particularly interesting then, but we're going to go to the astrology behind it. Question for Michael L. Do we have an idea of the timeline of the U.S. coming out of the chaos and coming into a rebirth of our nation?
Well, I would say that for that, I would trust the progressed lunar cycle in the perspective that we have a turning, we turn a corner in 31, and then we have this 2038 full moon with a change in sun sign. Every 30 years, the progressed sun will change of a person or of a country. And so I would trust the idea that between now and 2038, we're building something powerful. We'll have to turn a corner at 31, but that's the sort of trajectory that I can absolutely, guarantee, because that's the power of the progressed chart. And the fact that at this tumultuous moment that we are starting the cycle, that's why I can say that with confidence to the asker, because that's the nature of progressed moon cycles, and because we're in the beginning of one, which means it can't be soon. It can't be now. It can't be next year. It can't be 27. It can't be 28, because we're not in a cycle for that. Something can turn in 7 years and fullness in 14. I hope that's not too long.
I like it. So this goes along the same lines, but different. From Texas Tarot. Do you see, and this is something that I actually asked James Van Prague, recorded show, on the show earlier today. Do you see a mass exit of souls from this planet before 2026?
I'd have to answer that question by saying I have never had visions like that. So being, 61 and sort of long in the journey, because I haven't received downloads like that, I wouldn't expect to be able to answer such a question. For me, when that happens, it's just a sensation. Like, I knew 9/11 was going to happen because I went to a brunch on that Sunday before, and I was like, I got to go home. Something terrible is going to happen. Something terrible is going to happen. I got to go home. But I thought it was like going to be in Silver Lake, or like in the car or the taxi ride. You'd be like, I had no idea that I was having a moment. And then the thing happened, and it was like 6 months later that I remembered that. So it's like my body feels a lot and my mind doesn't participate. So I don't get vision like that.
Yeah.
But I do think that those cycles are knowable. Did James say anything to you about that? Because that's certainly his wheelhouse.
He believes that war is coming.
Yeah.
But his definition of war was interesting. That there may be, for instance, war in the U.S. in the cities as part of his definition of war. That sounds a lot like civil war to me. Yeah. He said that a mass exodus may well be coming, but if there is a mass exodus that takes place, that is a mass exodus of souls who are not higher level, more advanced souls who've chosen to come here at this time to go through this experience for their own development and for the development of all of humanity.
You know, I can absolutely vibe with the idea that in 27, when Pluto starts crossing the south node of the United States, that could be an energy that might reflect people leaving. Pluto is the planet of death, and the south node and the north node is literally the corridor of people being born to be Americans, right? The karmic south node, north node of Dharma for the United States is the country moving from the past into the future. So if you're born and you become an American, either being born here or it's part of your, your life to be here, then you become part of that nodal path tunnel of America unfolding from its past to its future. So the planet of death coming into contact with the trajectory of the planet's movement, that makes a little bit of sense to me as possibly being in alignment with people who are having some vision of souls leaving. And I will say that as a city dweller, again, like I don't have vision about the future, but Michael, I've had thoughts that the city was going to be a more challenging place than the country. Like I've had that thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. That'll be a
just keep
stay
having
tuned.
to say, we are resilient, we are resilient, we are resilient, beyond measure.
So I am asked if there's a way to bring the mic a little bit closer to you. I don't know if that can be. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can. As I was telling my team, I don't know if it moves. This was a fascinating question. I love this question from Sam Minkley. Does changing my name change my alignment in astrology at all?
No, not at all. It does change something powerful within your embodiment because your name is bigger than printed on your driver's license. Like your name is a sound, and the sound of your name is the sound of you. And so changing the sound of you is an enormous shift in identity. Very, very, very powerful. But doesn't change anything about where you took your first breath. And that's what astrology is. So astrology doesn't give a shit what you call yourself. Astrology cares about where and when you took your first breath.
Well, there can be this other thing, not astrology, called numerology, where we can add up all the numbers behind your letters.
Yes. Listen, Lennox is not my birth name. My birth name is Lenusky. I'm so sorry. The sun has gone down, so I wasn't quite prepared for the light change.
That's okay. And I'm looking at this, and my producer is in the UK, so he went to sleep, and I'm looking at the system going, what can I do? Better not touch that dial.
Right.
It's all good. Oh, he's woken up. Somebody has woken him, and he's come back in. So I better get to the next question before he takes over my computer again. From Sarah, Better Things Ahead, Solario. Do the planet alignments have similar magnetic Earth effects to solar flares?
No, I mean that's part of why we are here. Because we have an enormous atmosphere and a magnetic field that's great enough to circumnavigate the solar wind around us. And you need an atmosphere for that. So that's why, I mean, that's why we are here, because we're protected. Something, if you look at Mercury is, blasted clean because it has no atmosphere. It just gets burned by the sun. Venus has a tremendous atmosphere and greenhouse gases, but we're the only ones with the enormous magnetic field that protects us. I hope I'm answering the question. Am I in the right?
My guess is that they're looking at the planetary alignment that we're going through right now and wondering, is there a poop ton of energy hitting us at this time because of the planetary alignment?
Here's what I would say about that. There's a temptation to think that like the movement of the planets, golly, I'm not sure I can get this language out in the way that I want to convey it. Let me see. Um, Remember that the planets were all one disk, right? So the fact that there were constellated planets where energies through gravity drew stuff in and became moving bodies that we now see as that's a planet separate from that planet. And when they move, those separate planets are doing different, geometrical things that impact us. And that's true and accurate, but you can't leave the room of the idea that we're just in one soup and that the moving
This sounds like
planets,
continents, a supercontinent and continents on the planet.
like the continents are moving. We can't feel them, but they're changing the ground under our feet. And yes, so it's sort of similar that it is their relative position from us that changes the color of the sensation and how we would describe it. But keep in mind that they're always relating to each other, always. So to ask a question where it seems like we're not talking about the planets interacting with each other when they're not in aspect.
Yeah.
But that's not accurate. When they're in aspect, there's something to report. Ta-da! But we're connected to everything 24/7, even when they're not making angles, so that we're never separate from it. I don't know that I'm getting my point across. So I'll stop talking. And
Maybe good enough. Let's go from there. And I like this question. This is kind of the warm and fuzzy question that I like. Are we going to, it's a question for you, of course, are we going to see more compassion in America? And I would say that this challenge that we're facing of the collective grr is not even limited to the US right now. So are we going to see more compassion in the world?
I wish I could answer yes. Astrologically, the North Node in Pisces. Pisces invented compassion and empathy so that we're moving for 18 months towards more of that. Mm-hmm. And all of the planets that are in Pisces now, not just the retrograding Mercury and Venus that are doing this, but Neptune and Saturn are in Pisces, will move out and then back. And anytime any planet is going near the Pisces archetype, we are birthing more empathy and compassion on the planet. I do think, however, that it can be a fool's fantasy to imagine that places where compassion and empathy cannot grow, that it will grow there. You can't generate empathy in human beings who have no empathy or who have very little. So you've got a whole bunch of people where empathy is almost overwhelming, and then you've got a lot of fired up people where there's no empathy at all. And so my belief, and as I've said many, many times, and you have your version of this, is that as more of us step into more of our inner empathy and compassion, we'll spread it around. But I guess I'd have to say, if you ask me, do I think we're going to see more empathy and compassion in the world in the spirit of that warm and fuzzy question? My answer is no. No, I don't think so. I don't see how it could be. I could see a future where other permutations take us into a place. Maybe that progressed full moon will show some of it, but I'm finding myself just slightly cynical in a way that I don't think I was 2 years ago.
Well, I would feel that we still have the power within us to, if we beam enough, this may be the kumbaya version of me here. I'm okay with that. If we can beam out, Care Bear Stare, enough love and light as a collective to those who are, to me, those who are not showing empathy are hurting the most.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe in this. I believe that this is how we do it. I think I see it as something much longer in its
Yeah.
unfolding than my life. So when I say no, because I'm going to be dead soon, at least I'm hoping. I can I be one? I'm done. I'm ready. I've completed my healing. No, but the point is that, that well, I don't really know what the point is, but I think that
You
it's a
think it's going to
long
be a
haul.
longer
It's
process
a
than a shorter
long,
one?
long haul. And if you are filled with compassion and empathy, you will have a better life. Doesn't matter what's happening out there in the lacking of it. If
Yeah.
you're cultivating a world and a community and an environment where your empathy and compassion can make a difference, that will give you the best experience of compassion that's available.
Thank you. I want to get to a wrap up here because I really want to respect your energy. You've put out so much tonight. I'm going to go take one last question I think here from the audience, and then see how you want to wrap this up. Maybe two, depending on how fast you can do it. So I'm going to talk really fast now. Paradoxical Tobacco asks, how do you reconcile our tropical birth chart with our Vedic birth charts?
Yeah. First of all, Vedic astrology is enormously fabulous. But also understand something. Vedic astrology works with the moon and cycles that come from the moon's placement and the Joshtis, the 28 mansions of the moon. So when you get your little horoscope and you look at what your life is going to be unfolding in Vedic, you're not looking at transits, you're looking at cycles, not at all at transits. And so we don't put the same emphasis, or they, in Vedic on the placement of planets and transits and signs the way Western does. They are a very, very, very different system that can equally predict how life is going to feel and unfold.
Yeah.
But they're very, 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 very different systems. The Western astrology is really about time and seasons because we start the clock at the vernal equinox and we don't care what the sidereal placement in the stars are. We don't give a shit that it's different than it was 2,000 years ago because Western astrology doesn't depend on the stars. And the stars and the constellations are not what you think it is. They're just placards, they're just billboards. The actual signs are 30-degree swaths of the time it takes for the Earth to move around the sun. So you think they're about like the constellation of Aries, but that was just a little, like you put up a flag to represent Aries, and that's those stars. And because of precession, we've moved away from there. So we're not like in the same location. And so people say, well, Western astrology isn't real because it's not lined up. And sidereal is. But sidereal isn't using the planetary alignments in the same way that we are in Western astrology. And again, it's all about time starting with the vernal equinox. That's the fastest way I could answer that.
Thank you. And then the last one that we're going to take on this is because this, I think, is bearing on everybody here today from Chris Richardson. What is Pluto meeting? When does Pluto meet the US South Node in 2027?
I will line it up and give you the exact
Thank you.
date for just a second. Yes, it's basically mid-March 2027. Let's see, January. Yeah, and it's a 2-year transit. So March of 27, peak in June, and then all of 2028 as well.
Thank you. And what does that mean for us?
Well, it means that in terms of the energy of kind of reckoning the past in a deeper, more powerful way starts in the spring of 2027. So whatever 25 brings and 26 sort of deepens and formulates, when we get into 27 and we get into the spring of 27, then where the country is reckoning with the past that got revealed in the Pluto return. So those 2 years are the years of really deep karmic, again, reckoning is the best word. So that to me looks a little bit, like the potential for war, and it aligns with the Uranus return.
Thank you. Or not so thank you.
Yeah, right.
As the case may be. All right. We get to wrap this up with a final question or two from C'est Moi. Before we do that, where can people go to find your work, to find your courses, to find
Yes.
your daily astro alert, everything?
Yeah, michaellennox.com is the website. Michael loves to talk about my daily astro alerts. They're a
Yes.
very detailed description of the day's astrology that I send out the night before, like very detailed. And if you want to learn astrology, I really do recommend you become a subscriber because you will learn. I'm sharing real astrology on a daily basis, and it's not a horoscope. It's real astrology. But michaellennox.com is where you can find out about all the things I do. And I'm actually really excited because I'm teaching one of my standard classes starting this Saturday. It's called Finding Your Voice.
Yeah.
Which is about, looking at the blocks in your psyche and
Yeah.
past and family of origin, challenges with speaking up more powerfully in your life. And what's funny, Michael, and you'll appreciate this, is that every time I'm teaching a class, I'm in it on some level. So it
The
was
teacher is the
fascinating to
student.
me that just as I was like marinating with like, I gotta speak in a new way, I'm gonna be teaching this class. So it starts on Saturday. It's 4 Saturdays. You don't have to be there live. You can work with the recordings. My classes go pretty deep. They're not fluffy. We go deep. We look at the emotional challenges and patterns that live in your body that keep you from expressing yourself more powerfully. So head on over to michaellennox.com and grab your seat if you want to join me starting on Saturday.
Thank you. And that sounds really cool. What else, if anything, we covered such a broad swath here today. What else do we need to know about what's coming, where we're at, collectively or individually?
Well, there's this idea in spiritual circles that those of us who are working in the light feel called, that we incarnated at this time to help with this unfolding on Earth.
Yeah.
I used to roll my eyes at that. Again, it was just too much woo. Even if I felt it in my heart, it was language that just couldn't come out of my mouth until these years, until we got into pandemic land. And suddenly it filled my body that's literal, that we really are here at this time to help with this transition. And so if that's so, then we got this, right? We came here to help. Now, I have a little easier time being in the world and not of it than most people because it's just a quirk of my personality. I was that way as a kid, so I don't have to effort at it as much, which I think is good for me as a teacher because I'm not as challenged by that, but I appreciate how difficult that can be. And so the message is that's cultivatable. You can cultivate a level of self-compassion and connection to spirit that will transcend the fearful aspect of being here to help. And so do that.
Woohoo! And I would say, because many people don't realize, you are well known as a dream expert. You wrote literally Llewellyn's Dream Dictionary, the Dictionary of Dreams. So, which to me, and I don't know if the phrase came from Jung or from where, I don't think I just made it up. The dream world is the waking world, and the waking world is the dream world.
Yeah.
Any last words that you want to share with people?
I love humanity. And I'm excited that
And we love you too.
Beautiful. I think there's an opportunity here that's epic, and we have a role, and it's scary, and we might not want to play it, but I don't think we have a choice now. Like, we don't have a choice.
I would woohoo, but I'm not going to woohoo that one. I couldn't agree more, though. So thank you so much, Michael.
Always a delight, Michael. Thank you for having me.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, dive in on the inside, anchor, anchor, anchor. And then when you feel called, if you feel called, step forward, out of love. And above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Michael.
That's a pleasure.
Every day there's a new horizon. Birds keep on singing, earth keeps on spinning. Time to toss any fears that rule you. Dance to vibrations, no limitations. Shine.